Okay, here we go. Another session went well today, up about a buy-in. Um, in terms of win rate, it went well. I think play-wise, probably we reached maybe 75% of our kind of good play level. So not a bad day, but definitely some spots where I rushed decisions. I got into a little bit of a win tilt, I think, where I was hitting hands, quite strong hands, and getting action. And so we made a few, I think, overly ambitious, excited moves that probably reduced our EV. We had actually slowed down a little bit and let the player opposite to us um, take a breath and maybe induce a little bit more, especially on nut changing turns and rivers when we hit our nuts. Not super good, just kind of went blasting out. And I think I lost a little bit of money there, which is not cool. When we're running well, we want to maximize the amount that we win. We don't want to um, pitch off a bunch of EV that we would have gained if we had just played a little bit more cautiously and played our range instead of our hands, right? So I think I got a little hand play since we were doing so well. Um, yeah, it's been a good 24 hours of poker. I did well last night live on a high hand, very funny high hand. Had to um, convince, I was in the small blind, folded to me, had ace two suited, convinced the big blind to put a little money in just so we could see what the flop looked like. And I flopped a straight flush for $2,700 high hand bonus, which is pretty sweet and pretty dramatic. Of course, it led to all kinds of debate around the table when I tabled my hand before the hand was done. Everyone was trying to convince the floor and the dealers that I killed my hand by showing it early, which is clearly not the case. And then there was all this debate about having not put money in properly. There's a minimum $15 investment, which doesn't make sense to me either, because if you pay your rake and you get to the flop and you win the hand with a bet that doesn't get called, that seems ridiculous that you would not win the hand. So in end, I got the money, and all the jealous players could shut the fuck up. They did end up buying the table some drinks, which didn't seem to matter in the jealousy department, and you know it's good. So ends up making my month quite nice. Was down almost 3 grand by the middle of the month. Had worked my way back up to almost even by last night, and then with that and also a bunch of really good action and similar to the session today, tripled my buy-in, I think, or quadrupled it last night. So have been running really good, running really hot, which is great, but got to know how to handle it. We have to keep ourselves calm. We don't need to get gambly. We don't need to start taking thinner lines and minus EV plays just because we feel like we have wins to our back. But we can certainly play a little bit more confidently and try and play out some marginal lines that maybe when our confidence is low and we're losing, we would just turtle up. But again, overall, you don't want to adjust your play based on your win or losing. You want to try and just play the right play for the right spot with a good base game, and then a considered exploitative strategy adjustments on top of that. Base game with minimal exploitation when we are sure of our reads. And very little of this sort of population tendencies thought, I think. Doesn't make much sense. Got a lot of hands, 33 hands, which I won't be able to do today. I'll probably do about 20 as usual, and we'll just see how it goes. And we'll see a HUD and make sure that that HUD is a little bit more useful. Okay, ace 10, we'll defend. some portion of the time we could certainly raise this. It's kind of a shitty ace 10 or ace X, right? Like, I don't usually use like ace 6 or ace 7 off raise because it just isn't good enough. And granted, we do block aces, so we probably have a slightly higher fold equity by using those hands. And maybe actually I should think about using those offsuit aces as the raising hands, since I'm trying to defend less using calls and shift some of those into raises. So actually talked myself into using hands like this and lower as offsuit aces as part of my raising range, considering that they do block the other people having aces. So we get a call from a fairly loose player, almost 40 VPIP, somewhat aggressive, 12-3 betting. And a reasonable fold to 3 bet, so we can believe that they have something worth continuing with. We do hit an ace, but otherwise this board is really not wonderful for us, so I think this probably would have been a smarter check. I don't think there was any exploitative considerations here that I was making, other than the fact that if their range is that big, I don't know what their fold to 3 bet would be. 60, so they continue with 40% of a 37% range, so it's actually quite wide. They will certainly have lower aces than us, but the board is quite coordinated, fairly wet, lots of clubs to call with. We don't have any, and those two middle cards are not great. So I think this is probably better as a check call as opposed to a lead. Get a call, board gets worse in all ways, and now we're checking. They put in a small bet. If they had gone big, I'd just fold, but they put in a small bet that's callable by the top pair. We do have a straight redraw on the off chance that they aren't flushing, but we're certainly being careful. 3 blank, and they put in a shove, which for sure is a fold. Let's just check to see whether there's any place for, what am I doing? Analysis uploads. Whoa, big EV loss today. So you can see I'm probably spazzing out somewhere. Look at that hand, either in process or we'll check it out at the end. So this ace 10 was this hand, and kind of grim. Solver just wants a call, but as per my explanations, I think it's fine as a raise, and the check on the river or on the flop is absolutely the right thing to do. Check the turn is the right thing to do. Call the turn is the right thing to do, and then checking and not calling the all in, I think is a great, totally fine fold considering player and stakes, etc., etc. I just said that we shouldn't be using our player pool data, but this guy wins at Showdown pretty well, so they know how to get there. They're not overwinning, but they're not underwinning. And I did actually check this stuff, and because these stats seemed fairly in line, I'm sort of realizing that this is just a loose, somewhat aggro player. So I think call 3-bet 2 the blinds, call 3-bet in position with a bunch of suited cards, played turn draw aggressively. So yeah, I think we give credit to somebody who's probably an okay player, but whether they are going to bluff this board, like what would they be bluffing? I guess queen jack with a club, king queen with a club maybe. That call, yeah, they'll probably call the first bet. Any sort of club single club cards, and then Jack, connected Jack, King Jack, like I said, Queen Jack. So yeah, there's potentially some combos in the range that they could certainly be bluffing with. But I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that that's probably a great call in generally. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So let's make some notes. Flop, check, no bets. Turn, fine. River solver wants a call with top pair. I guess my argument would be we don't block flushes. I'd rather have like a one flush card to block that. I do block a straight, granted. Maybe if we had ace 10 of clubs, maybe then we could talk ourselves into a call. Maybe we're overfolding to shoves. Obviously, they are very polar, so they have lots of potential for bluffing hands. They really coordinate well with this board. I don't see them doing this with any lesser value than at the very least some sort of flush. So a king high flush probably. Maybe not at the least, some sort of flush, let's say. It would be a bold. Not sure. Have the balls. Balls, but stats on player indicate ability to bluff river, and their range is potentially over full of hands to bluff with. So they may be over bluffing here. Maybe. It just seems, I think a shove on an ace high board to me really reads as getting a call from a top pair, exactly the kind of hand I have. So especially with my flop lead, or my flop C bet. Yeah. I don't know. Too tricky. Very wet board, but certainly can name quite a few bluffs in range. Tens will open, will raise. They call. This guy is 41 VPIP, so quite wide, not a ton of hands. Queen high flop, not super great for us world-wise. So elect to check with strong value. Flush comes on turn. They check again. I think again we're just wanting to see showdown, but yet I bet. I don't think this is a particularly smart bet at this point, particularly if we get raised. We're going to hate our fucking life. Blank 4, they fold, or they check, and then we were called by 5s. So I don't know. Turn bet seems optimistic. Hating life if we are raised. Why bet on a flush coming card? It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense with medium value, demoted value. Like why bet with a hand that just got demoted? Protecting against kings and kings and aces seems odd. So flop, it has us betting more, and turn actually has some bets here too. So it's not completely out of the realm of reasonable, I guess. Seems weird though. Why would you bet with the middle of your range like that? Um, yeah, so that's just almost all very noisy. Really should just be a check. We don't need to bet here. Some better top pairs. We can bet the sort of cards around the straight. Some better sets. Lots to bet. Betting is, there's a bit of it, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense with the tens. So that is not smart. Accuracy is good. King 4 will defend. Certainly raise as well. I usually am not raising with kings though. We'll check it. They bet. We'll call. Oh no, we raise. That's not a bad idea. I think that's okay to raise there. Small pair. Backdoor flush draw. Not a great hand. Lots of aces will fold. Lots of better kings will fold. I think that's not a bad idea. I'm willing to go on a limb and say maybe we did okay there. King 4. Machine doesn't really have a lot of raises, so no, just a call. And EV is quite significant, so no. Good try. Good try, Jimmy. Not the best and to raise with. Just call. Probably because those ace highs are it's too optimistic. I think I'll bet you looking here it'll be more like queens and jacks. Those seem like always the hands that are check raising with bet 50. Also, the size doesn't really make a ton of sense to bet against, but yeah. So 7 draws and lower cards. 5 draws, lower cards. 4 doesn't. 4 just calls. 8's just call. So the ones around the straights can do the raising to help these bigger pairs. Yeah. So top pair, over pairs, straights and such. And the weak hands would be these cards coordinating around the straight. So kind of off by 1 pip with king 4. King 5 is fine, but it's bigger than just being off slightly. Want to use cards around the straight. So king 7 and king 5, not king 4. Also queen 7, jack 7, 10 7, etc. Many more better hands above it in the curve to get folds from. So good idea. Maybe just a little too much showdown value. I'm not sure. We raise on the button. We get re-raised, and we will call. A lot of time we'll fold. So we'll call a bet, and then they check, and we'll check back. Check the checking range. When they call 3/4, or we bet 3/4 pot on a pretty innocuous run out, I think we just call with queen 10 against queen 10. That's a nice pot, almost 100 bigs. I don't know whether queen 10 is a good combo for them to be betting. Stats don't really tell us much. Ace jack could very possibly be, I think it's probably a defend against a small blind. Strong enough. Ace jack off. And that was this one. Yeah. We can call it. We can also raise it. Certainly call a bet. We certainly check. And we certainly 100% call a big bet. Let's just look at what their better bluffs would be. I would think their better bluffs are probably, I'm going to say like 10. Oh, queen 10. Queen 10, 9, queen 9, jack 9. Any of the suits matter? Probably anything that's not a spade, so that's good in that way. So maybe that they used not a bad combo to bluff with. Let's see. Queen 10. There. Yeah. It's good. It's not a bad play. Sizing's not bad. Maybe a little big. I want to bet maybe a little smaller, but it's pretty close. So, good. Nice try there, Andre. Yeah, they block ace queen as well. So we re-raise, then they get repopped. Now the only reason I call here is A, we got position, so that gives us a lot of VV, and B, this guy's got a 50 VPIP, but it is over 4 hands. So it really means we don't know much about this person. And I think in position, ace queen is going to be a call, even to a 4-bet. And then we hit a queen with a redraw, and they check. And then flush comes in. We got fantastic showdown value. We're not betting for any value here against a flush and a straight. Granted, they don't have the 10-7 likely, but they could certainly have jack 10. So there's no world where we need to be reopening the action when they check to us. And then just the worst run out ever. Fourth diamond. Again, we surely want to get to showdown and we want to see, I don't know, jacks maybe or something like that. Ace jack, yeah, ace jack. So we were ahead the whole time, and that's fine. It's a good hand. Ace jack. It's a good hand. That was an inconsistency. Let's quickly do a check here. I don't think there's much to figure out, but I always like to look because it'll tell me a few things. Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Just whether we actually have any bets kind of in these spots. So we could certainly bet to, there's enough EV in there, almost a 1.1 EV, 0.1 blind. So the flop certainly could see a small, tiny low bet, 10% bet, as could the turn, as could the river actually. So while our passive play is fine, we also could be investing small amounts across the board there with non-flushed cards. It's good to know. Interesting. EVs are very slight, except for here. That one node here, we have enough denial needs, I guess, that value bet makes sense, even though it is a pretty nasty ass board. But it is a 4-bet pot. One more bet, and we're all in, really. Think. So if we do a 10% on the flop, it's 5. Yeah, 60. We're very close. Like we're getting very close to all in. And so by the time this happens, we're actually not loving to have our stack in the middle. But, which is interesting because that's like, again, I guess because they're not betting, they would absolutely be betting flushes, made flushes. So we can discount those out of their range pretty heavily. Anyway, I think it's okay. All streets do have some bets, small bets. 4-bet pot, called pot. So SPR very low. But also cautious 6 is almost as good. Flop has 0.1 more EV, more BB. If that small, but again, finds a stack up. For shove that, we would likely have to call off. Kings, we raise this one. Latham 91. And Vladam 91 calls, and ace comes right on the board, so we'll check it. When they check to us on the turn, I think we can start putting some bets in here against smaller pocket pairs. Unfortunately, we went very cautious again and didn't bet at all in this hand. So if anything, the river 100% needs a bet. They would have bet their ace by this point. After us checking, they're betting aces all day long. If not on the turn, then for sure on the river. So I think this was missed value. Almost positive the machine will have us putting some bet in at some point on the street on this hand. Yeah, so turn, some portion of the time we're betting B33, B50, and most of the time B50 on the river. Even though the EVs are running the same, there's still bets across the way there. Turn and river, mixing 6 and B50 or so. That's by the time we get to river, they are discounted way out of aces. Especially with a flush draw, they would, in theory, in their minds, say that they need to protect their ace. So we have lots of calls from smaller EPs. So we're going to say that's okay. It's not great, it's just okay. Missed value. Get a cold call from mid position, bad player, 57 V pip over 7 hands, 3-way. We hit a jack, middle position. It feels like a hand from yesterday. Monkey in the middle, we'll just check it through. 6 comes, does nothing for our range. We want to just try and show down a jab, pair of jacks. So when the 7 comes there for a pot size bet, I think it's probably fine to fold with one person behind. We could certainly bluff catch, but the fact that we have somebody behind us and us calling, they get incentivized to squeeze in a spot where the initial opener could be just stabbing, trying to win a pot. So I think the fold's fine. I don't want to load up all my rocket sims right now. Maybe later. I wonder if I'd have that. I have sims similar. I have a queen 7-2. I think a king queen 2 or something. Oh yeah, I was gonna run that strategy, see what our strategy is if we simplify. Check, and out of position on the river, what we would do. So we resqueeze with our 3-bet with king jack in the big blind. Hit a gorgeous flop. It's a paired board, so possibly we could put a bet in here. Maybe the solver would want us to. King jack seems just in the realm of not. It's kind of almost good enough to be showdown, but kind of not. We could certainly put a little small bet in, and if we get raised, we just fold out. Nothing to lose. Then when we hit a king, now I think we've invested some money. But we're going small because they are quite polared, I think. They're the polar range. The king helps us better. They call, then they lead on the flush card and a king queen. We're certainly never folding. Small blind versus big blind, and especially to this size. So it's an easy call. I guess I will go to the solves to see if maybe we're actually raising here for some reason, and we end up chopping. Kind of a weird action by them. I don't like that. Just a flush. That's kind of like something I would do. Flush river. Our bet there is maybe a bit small. So if we're going to bet a king, we want a polar instead of, especially in position. And I thought of that actually in game. I was like, why am I betting small bets in position on the turn? I'm trying to simplify myself into one size in position on turns and rivers. So, because we're reopening the action, we're just asking ourselves to get raised. And funny that it does wants a fold, but I think it's probably a fine call, especially against such a weird donkey kind of. I mean, I guess if you had a flush and you didn't want to not get action, you would donk out. Sort of seems to be the theory. And then maybe they're using a king to try and bluff something, bluff me off a king maybe. Bluff me off king queen, bluff me off ace king maybe. I don't know. Not totally sure what the thought process is there. Polar in position on turns. So another inaccuracy. A6, we'll raise the button. Oh no, this time we called them. No stats, probably okay. Flop a flush draw. Gonna call a bet. Good raise there, but also king 10, 8 is pretty solid for their range. 2, and then the bigger bet of overbet 12 over 8. Now we're not actually getting our odds, and we're not really deep enough with them. We got lots, but they don't have a lot, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to call here, I don't think. Although I have seen solvers call for some reason, and I can't quite figure out why we would speculate with an overbet like that when we're not getting odds. And the likelihood of is this one? So this is probably the one where it hated our. Yeah, so it wants a call. I don't know. I just don't see in what world. I guess there's a slight amount of EV there. Even when we hit the flush, even though we probably don't get paid, there is enough EV in the line to warrant a call. Flop does have mixes between checks and bets, or calls and bets, or raises, calls and raises. So another inaccuracy. Turn. Silver wants call. Need to not worry so much about direct odds or even implied slides. There's enough times here when we hit. So it's like we have 12, probably 12 solid outs, 12 solid outs, which is 24%-ish. And we're getting on that bet, we're getting We're getting 37. So 24, 37. It's 13% difference. And we potentially capture one more bet of, so we put 12 in, 24, 32, 33 or so. And then when Well, if we're out of position, I don't know how we get that money in there. How do you get money in to get a call from king, not king, say ace king, or king queen or something, when the flush comes? Because if we check to them, they most likely will just check back. This is where I don't totally get, and I think there is a strategy for river. Say so they overbet and we call, and then the thing comes. Do we have any leads? No, there's no leads. So there's just never a strategy for if they bet 33, a6 will have some raises. So we just call. Then that card comes. And do we have leads? No. Tiny bit of leads there. But just solver noise probably. So it just doesn't seem to make sense to me that we check. I guess they have enough of the time, so they have a bunch of flushes that are betting. They have sets of kings that are betting that we can raise, and then they have enough bluffs that they will, in theory, put more money into the pot. Actually, that's a bad card. We went to 3 on the river. I want a pair. So Jack 10 does bet. Jack 9 bets a little bit. Queen 9. Queen 9 is a straight. Queen 10 bets. Queen Jack bets. So it's these cards put enough money into the pot in theory that when we've hit the flush, we can gain that EV that's missing from there. Therein lies the implied, is there the assumption that they will bluff. Right. Okay, so that makes total sense. That's what I'm missing. That's the key little spot here. So it's not about getting money from another value hand that puts a last bet in, like their value that they bet is just flushes and aces. Just and the flushes, there are worse flushes, but they're there. But they are there. Worse Queen X and Jack X flushes, we'll bet. And all shove likely, assuming we shove with enough bluffs, etc. But also there is value from their bluffs on river that they need to balance that value. And therein also is lots of EV. Great. Great, 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 great. So even though we're not getting the direct price, and even though we think a King X will not bet the river, which is true, they've polared themselves, by this bet. So they have lots of flush draws, and they have lots of sets and some 2 pairs. And granted, the 2 pairs won't bet, but maybe the sets will, some of them, some portion of the time. And they have lower flushes that will probably bet some portion of the time, maybe small, but it's still a bet. And the probably B75, say. And the and then all of the bluffs that they need to have there, that they should have, if they're going to be betting value. If they're just not going to bet any value at all, then of course we'd fold. So great. So we can start This is kind of a PLO thing. I would be folding off without like direct odds, and that's not wise because PLO has bluffing, but it's kind of done differently, I guess. Don't really understand the game that deeply yet. Okay, so that one is an inaccuracy as well. So lots of inaccuracies today. Re-raised the queens, re-raised, and now super ass tight player, only 15 hands. Don't think we need to repop. Because I think only better calls and worse folds, probably ace king folds, and that's the best we can hope for. So we call, king comes, and they bet small enough for us to call. And the 8 comes, and now it's still small enough. It's only a third. But if we call it, we're in. In fact, calling this first one, we're in. Yeah, so we should have just gone, even though we're probably losing to a king. Maybe we do just shove. That's a tricky spot. Either that or we just don't call this bet. Because by calling this bet, it's now given us the SPR to be in. I'm going to say I did not think that one out well enough in hand to be aware. Yeah, so we actually just go all in on the free flop. Just bite it. Bite it. Hope for the best. That's assuming ace kings are going to call. That's assuming jacks are going to call. Assuming jacks played this way. I've been doing this too with call this a blunder. It'll be our first blunder in a bit. Let's just get it in with the premium and take our medicine. Medicine similar to having ace king and falling to see a flop. We can capture lots of EV with a shove denial. The shove denying ace king chance to see flop. Assuming they fold, of course. Fold. Ace king off, I think, has lots of folds. Let's see. Pretty sure ace kings do fold here. So a shove. This is my 4 and 5 bet. Not totally knowing what I'm doing 100% of the time. Raise. So here, button. We shove queens. No, we shove queens. We actually shove down to tens. We also shove these ace fives. We shove some of these lower pairs. So our range is quite wide for shoves. And so if we go, they will fold not any of the ace kings, but they will fall with some of these supposedly. I doubt that calls. I doubt that calls. If you were to adjust this sim and you say that these guys don't call and this is an edgy maybe, because again if we're doing enough ace king shoves, if we're doing enough ace five shoves, if we're doing enough of these low card shoves, like it's a pretty wide range. Like these king queen, ace queens, ace jacks, like a lot of stuff. Hey, ace four even. That does incentivize these smaller pairs to call, but they have to trust that we are using those. And if most of the time they're calling or folding, and not shoving, we're just not shoving enough, and we certainly aren't. If we're not shoving with queens, then we're just shoving at this quad here, and we need to bring back a little bit of this. I used to be aggressive enough that I would start doing some shoves with jacks and tens even, and sometimes even a king jack, knowing that they block, and for sure sometimes an ace jack suited. But I think from playing in these little small stakes where when people are four betting, they have like basically those two and sometimes that and not even that. Those are like sometimes even limped pre, so they don't even get here. So I have to widen my shoving range to a 4-bet. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, or as a 4-bet. Raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, yeah. So broader shove range. Online, let's not be shy to shove 5-bet down to tens and use ace 5 and ace jack and even some king queen and king jack. They will overfold likely, but best to have a read on players' capability to be 4-betting wide enough that if they are as tight as we are, then it doesn't make sense to be shoving versus 4-bets. They're that strong. Okay, so was that our massive EV loss hand? No, not too bad. -2. All right. 15 more minutes. Did I blunder that? I blundered that, I think. Yeah. So again, we're never limping or never checking even shitty hands now. I want defined ranges. They call. We flop a somewhat good board for us, so we lead. They call. Now we check, not good card, draw turn, concentrated around kings. They check as well. We get a pair of sevens that we just want to show down, and we ended up scooping against a pair of sixes. Open the king six, get a call. Two queen, paired queens. I think we can put a bet in here. But we'll do a small bet because there's lots of polarization with them on queens. Pick up a flush turn now. We don't really want to put another bet in because we don't want to get raised, and we want to try and hit a flush. And then cautiously put a little bit more money in the pot. Then when the second pair comes, the only thing we'd be doing is trying to chop out or trying to get rid of an ace, which I don't know. Like, we beat anything but an ace and queens and threes, obviously. But oh, and any pocket pair will beat us. Three's not in our range, doesn't change anything. I think it's fine to just check and let this hand go against an ace. Fine. So the only reason that might not be the case is because we have position. So we have some rights to try and hit something on the... Yeah, there's nothing there, so no. Turn has way more bets. Same EV, but we certainly could stab at that with the flush. So, okay, turn, we can indeed bet the flush draw and get a fold from better and i.e. ace-x. I guess I sort of thought like we picked up a lot of equity, and it's strong enough that we just don't want to get blown off it. Right here, not here. polarize? Yeah, we do too. Polarizing around the queens. Right. And king queen blocks that in their hand. So and we have the polar range now after their flop call. Ace queen, kind of nothing board. Yep, more nothing board. Just a fold, I guess. We have 2 overs. And probably this would be defend, knowing the little that I know about small blind versus big blind. We probably do want to call here to try and spike an ace or a queen. We don't block flush draws. Definitely a bluff catcher if there ever was one. Probably want to call here with potentially best hand and draws up pair. And again, small blind, big blind. Again, don't really hit much on the flop. Now we pick up a gutter, but easily queen could be good for them. And we hit the ace on the river. I decide to protect a checking range and call a bet versus a queen. Tens. Open, defended, over pair. Go slightly bigger, a little bit polar. Not probably the right thing to do because they're the more polar range. So, but we do have over cards. We have the stronger over cards. They have 9-6 pairs. They have 6-4 pair, 2 pairs. They have some 4s. We have the 4s too. We have 6s. We have 9s. So our polar actually is probably shared, which allows us to mix. I think our range is stronger. We do have like ace 9, king 9, queen 9, sometimes jack 9. They have a few more 9s than us. 10, 9. We have 9, 8. Yeah. So let's take a look at that one and just look what the ranges are like. And this one. Size is a little big. I'm gonna go a little smaller, B50 though. It's not bad. And then if we're gonna continue, the 5 doesn't change a lot, it seems, for us to allow us to continue to polar. River is fine. So this node ranges run pretty tight, but our range is overall better. And that's why the sizing is, don't necessarily have a polar advantage, as we can see here. So our size is probably off, but we do have such a significant range advantage across almost all of the up to 95% equity that we have lots of bets and they can be slightly bigger. We're called and they check. We're going to have a pretty polar range at this point. Slightly polar. So again, we're not fully polarizing. We're sizing up a bit. In this area, we're more polarized, sort of from 75 on to 95. And then Otherwise, their range is quite strong below, right? Which makes sense with that 5. So their range advantage has gotten bigger, and we want to check more. But when we bet, we want to bet bigger. So I think the turn, let's see, the flop, we don't have polar advantage here, so size is smaller, but we have such a strong range advantage that we can bet lots, lots. In the turn, their range has strengthened, is it? So we bet, and we have 60% EV. When they call, it goes down to so you don't get, unfortunately you don't get after action before turn. That would be interesting because once we make the bet, our EV's gone sky high, but their call brings it back down again. The 5, yeah, so our range is now at a slight disadvantage, so we don't really have a lot of oh no, theirs is. Our range, yes, here is at a slight disadvantage. Oh, okay, so that hasn't changed. So, but we do have some polarity in there, slight amount, especially in here. So we do have not a massive, sort of a semi-polar. The range has strengthened. We have lost with call and 5, but we have enough 75% plus over them that allows for a semi-polar B75. But check's good too. Great. This is good. It's okay actually. Slightly, sizes aren't perfect, but that was a misclick. I didn't mean to do that. I would have raised or folded. We have 2 overs and a backdoor. We could certainly use this to raise. They're betting on a board that's in theory better for us. Decide to call. They continue to bet. We don't really pick up anything other than a gut shot, and I just sort of felt like I made a mistake by being here. I don't really know what this range looks like. Small blind calling cutoff. I never have spent any time sort of thinking about that, so I just decided to bail out. And I'm not going to bother to look at this. This was a inaccuracy. Free misclick. Misclick. All. 7-3, same deal. Let's see what you really have. They have a big stack, that's for sure. Board's good for us, so we bet. They call, and now they're really concentrating around aces. And even though sixes are somewhat more in our range, we could certainly bet again. We block 7-6. But I elect to check, and then a flush comes, and they put a half pot bet in, which we fold to. Queen 9, defend. It could have been a raise. Easily could have been a raise. Probably should be a raise. Oh, you know what? I decided Queen 9 is close enough together that they're kind of like it's almost a Broadway hand. So I decided to call if it was Queen 6 or Queen 5, we'd for sure raise. We had a piece of it, so we have to call 1 off, I think. Then it's check, check. And the queen on the river allows us, I believe, to put a bet in. But I decide to check call, which I do. And we have a better hand. So I think this is good. Let's just see if that's the case. 9. Gonna knock off here pretty soon. Queen 9, yeah, this one. Yeah, we certainly could pull her out. I've been generally, I don't that I guess again, if they have, we discount out most of their flushes because most people aren't going to properly play. Although you would think the machine would probably get to the river with some flushes. So polarizing with 2 pair on a straight and 10-8 straight and a flush board seems optimistic, to say the least. Check is slightly more EV, calling for sure, and you can even raise, which has more EV. I don't know, man. Why would you raise with Queen 9 on a flush straighted board against a not a fully polar, but a getting there polar bet? Just seems wacky. Seems just wacky. So funny what this fucking thing will do sometimes. Solver has a raise a good portion of the time. That shows 0.1 more EV than calling, which is surprising versus this bet on this board. Trying to think what it would be. We block some sets. We don't really block a straight. We assume that there's just not a lot of flushes here by now, that they would have continued on the turn. Yeah, so it's this node. So for sure the flushes, 2 pair. Is that us? It's 6, 7, yeah. Okay, so in the solve there actually isn't any raises. I'm not sure why the analyzer says there should be. Straights raise, flushes raise. Second pair, jacks raise. Third pair, nines raise. And those are both as bluffs. Queen jack. No raising. Oh no, not queen jack. Queen 9, no raising. Strange. So let's just lose this. Must be an analyzer mistake. Where are we? Queen 9. Is there anything else? Other one of these aces hands was interesting, I think. So we get this. We go squeeze. Get called. We're in position. Good range bet for us. We make it. They call. 8 comes. I slowed down here, and partially it was due to stack depth, and partially, I don't know. I think probably I'm just monsters under the bed action. I guess in my mind, the 8 isn't the greatest card for us, and we want to protect a checking range. We have other better things that we can bet, which just includes like a lot of flush draws and sets of king, sets of 9, sets of 8s, 9, 9, 8. I think we're squeezing with all of those, so I think they're here in range. This guy's I don't really have a lot on him, but he's super wide, so probably it's worth continuing betting with the aces. At equilibrium, maybe there's a bunch of checks. I'm going to want to check this. And then the 6 also is just wacko. Like, the guy just goes bananas with his whole stack. And I don't know how to react to that. I don't know if I've underrepped myself so much that they can just crash it. I don't know if they think top pair is good enough. I don't know if a flush draw they missed and now they just are shoving for this the hope and a prayer of a 50 big blind pot. It just seems so out there. So let's check this one. I folded, by the way, which maybe is crazy. Yeah, so this one, raise, check a tiny portion of the time. The EV on that is not as, oh, it's actually 61. It's about one off small bet. So we could put another small bet in is probably the better play. And then the river shove. I don't know, man. At equilibrium, it's a call against a 50 VPIP, which we don't know what they are. They have a huge wide range. It's just, you're going to knock off a stack and a half on a hope and a prayer against somebody you don't know anything about. So this is another, like, we are doing pretty well, and then things get dicey, right? Here's another one. I did not bet anything on this kind of a crummy board, but we have aces. Like, I just didn't get any of the value out of the aces, and I don't know whether that one, I'm probably going to post that to my people and see. This was the big EV loss for the session, though. It was a big potential blunder, but I actually don't know how I feel about that. Maybe it's a huge mistake. Maybe we have to just man up and make those plays. King, queen, what's this one? EV loss, yeah. So that and that are our worst moments. Quite a few, actually. Queens, it's the 4-bet. Oh yeah, so not shoving the queens. King 7 ISO. Folding the flop with it. Just a pair of sevens was a not bluffing this river. King queen. Should have bet there. Would have got ace 9 to fold. Gonna see what my people think. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna knock off now. Mine's starting to drift. So it continues to be a work in progress. Even though we booked a win, we had moments like this where we potentially lost a lot of EV. We could have easily stacked off 3 stacks with that call. We've under-repped our hand by checking the turn. We probably didn't even need to check the turn, even though 8 isn't great for us, and we want to we're gonna. There is a lot of value that we have that is checking turn. Other king X, smaller pocket pairs than the ace. So having the aces in that checking range seems somewhat reasonable as some sort of protection. But yeah, we just need to keep digging, keep going deeper, and keep trying to get ourselves into a place where we are, just, somewhat consistently booking wins. And when we have days where we're getting dealt good cards, we are maximizing the value of those wins. All right, thanks.